Serious, what is, in your opinion, the most disturbing archaeological discovery? Archaeology student here. Here's one I learned in class. A Pueblo village went through a horrible drought and famine. A dwelling was found with the remains of a family that had died violently and had several cut marks all over their body. They also found a human coprolite, ancient poop. It is common practice to run chemical analyses of coprolites to figure out a person's last meal. It was human flesh. The DNA of the flesh particles matched the DNA of the family. Somebody murdered and ate the family, then pooped in the house. It's not really a single discovery, more of raw human nature exposed through repeated actions. Fetal skeletal remains are often found in privies near brothels. Just imagine being the first guy to dig up a skull of a T-Rex. The first king of Hawaii, Kamehameha the Great, united the islands via conquest, and on Oahu he defeated the main force opposing him by trapping them on a cliff, the Pali, and essentially shoving them off. In the 1960s, when they began building a highway through the mountains, they at one point were doing construction in the area where the battle was fought, and the construction unearthed hundreds of skulls and human remains. To this day no one camps or hikes in the valley beneath the Pali because of several supernatural incidents many believe are linked to the fact hundreds fell to their death in the valley. Edit, a very good painting depicting the battle. Then infants that were buried wearing a slightly older toddler's skullcap as a hat. Evidence of a second extinction event level meteor impact. It kind of means that extinction event meteors not only have happened, but are not all that rare of a thing when you take the age of the Earth into consideration. That there was an entire civilization living in the Amazon basin that was destroyed by European diseases without Europeans making contact or becoming aware of it, and the Amazon rainforest is a gigantic, overgrown garden. There was the huge recent human sacrifice temple in Mexico they recently unearthed that had hung pillars that were decorated with human skulls all the way up to the ceiling. In 2016-2017, they unearthed something like 900 plus remains of babies who died or were killed by nuns in Tuam, Galway, Ireland. It was the septic tank of an old site where a laundry used to be. This is a place you were sent if you had a baby out of wedlock or your family cared too much about how the neighbors thought of them. You washed clothes until you had birth and your baby went to an orphanage. Wealthy Irish, British and American couples came to help the poor babies whose mother was well and alive in the laundry. Obviously, sadly, some babies never made it to the orphanage. I always say it. Priests are now known to have done horrific things, but the nuns are worse. They hide things and do things like Vikings burial sites are pretty disturbing. They were often buried with their wives, slaves and horses. The way Utsi the Iceman died was pretty gruesome too. Also, all of the mass graves of the past plagues. I live in a city where a couple of years ago a mass grave of hundreds of 19th century cholera victims was discovered. We knew they were there somewhere. We've been finding bones in the ground for years. The discovery was still a shock for people who basically live now on this graveyard. Homo erectus mining gold. What was the purpose? Why would a primitive man 2 or 3 species away from sapiens dig 20 feet deep holes for a few ounces of metal? There's an ancestral Puebloan story passed down by the Navajo of a gambler who came up from the south and enslaved the APS, forcing them to build great cities where they did not want to live and perform rituals involving cannibalism. Archaeologists later discovered South American parrot feathers and human bones with stone scrapings, evidence of cannibalism, in Chaco Canyon, a civilization that showed signs of early abandonment due to its low amount of burials and trash pits. Göbekli Tepe. The sheer magnitude and age of the site are itself mind-boggling. A civilization without writing and apparently lacking proper settlements or agriculture continued to develop this temple complex for thousands of years since 10.000 BCE. Some monoliths might require up to 100 of people to bring and erect them. How did they pass the meaning of this endless project through generations? And the disturbing part, this huge complex was deliberately buried, and thus well preserved, under hundreds cubic tons of dirt around 8000 BCE. Imagine deliberately burying Louvre Museum or Vatican. What sort of horrible apprehension or presentiment about the future made them to abandon and inter a work of many generations? This thought gave me goosebumps as I stand there looking at the part uncovered by archaeologists. They mean only 5% of the complex was uncovered yet. I highly recommend visiting the site and the Museum of Orpha.